Once again, it's the Monaghan Way with us here in association with Northern Sound and myself, Sean McCaffrey. It's episode 18 that we're into, and when I worked that back in my own head, that's 18 weeks we've been going with this now. So thanks a million, as always, for your interaction with us here, your listens and your views. Obviously, this goes out on YouTube on their streaming podcast platform. It's also available on your Apple and Spotify or anywhere else that you pick up on your podcasts. And I think it's proven to be a nice listen for a lot of people, particularly with the championship previews and reviews that we've been giving you here. Joined once again by Fergal Monaghan. Thanks, Fergal, for dropping in with us here once again also as well. It's much appreciated. And it's a sort of the norm now, the done thing after a weekend of championship action, the sort of dissecting and breaking down on who's good, who's bad, where's the form, what's happening. And it's hard to beat. You're rolling up the games, you're chatting and talking about it. You're leaving a game, you're chatting and talking about it. And there's a week of discussion after it, which is what you want.
Absolutely, yeah. It's well, we're getting to the business end of things now, and things are starting to make a bit more sense. Everyone in Enniskeane or the team, they've got their head into the semi-final before everyone else, which is a brilliant thing for them, but also probably gives them a bit of a headache. I know we'll come to that later on. And as well, a lot of questions still to be answered, because basically that group with Maracloon, Ballabay, Annamullen, and now Latin, after losing in Enniskeane, who are high flying and going really well, anything can happen there. All four teams can be pulled into different scenarios. And we could be going at a three-way tie with scoring difference, or we could go on a head-to-head if there's two teams on the same point. So that is looking tricky. And then, of course, on the other side, you have a couple of teams vying for top spot. You have Clontibret, Scottstown, Carduff still there as well. Carduff have Scottstown at home. A couple of really big matches, which is actually brilliant going into the last round of championship games, because sometimes one of the things that can be leveled at this format is that we have a lot of dead rubbers. Not so really this time, particularly the way Enniskeane have their bye and they're already guaranteed with 4 wins from 4. They're in a semi-final. Now they have their own challenges, as I say, because they have a big layoff, which Clontibret had to deal with last year when they went straight into the semi-final. But that's a worry that John McEntee, I'm sure, will take on board and not be too concerned about at the minute, because they've been brilliant. But the rest of the games are all intriguing and all mean that we have something's at stake, which makes it really, really good.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I know between ourselves, we split our weekend on the weekend gone past. I had 2 senior games on the Saturday. You yourself had the 2 senior games on Sunday. So we'll be maybe crisscrossing, but just to look back briefly on those. By the way, I must say your predictions, you called it Scottstown, Clontibret, Maracloon. We both had sort of hedged a draw between Enniskeane and Latin. I listened back, he maybe went Latin because of it being home.
I went Latin. And yeah. Sean, I knew walking into Latin, I was 3 from 3. And I knew as I walked, I spoke to a Latin man on the way in, and I told him I predicted that, and he says, that's terrible news. That's it. He says, we're going. And he was right. Very hard to get 4 from 4. So I gave them the kiss of death. It's on me. But on the good side of things, Sean, people are listening, because people got on to me about, a couple of Enniskeane people got on to me and goes, you were wrong on your prediction. So it's people are listening. That's an important thing.
It is, but it's engaging. But it's amazing that every opinion is valued. Every look at what you're seeing and what you're bringing is valued, not only from this perspective, but even from the spectators and supporters that are at the games. And the one thing I have to note from being at quite a number of the championship games over the weekend is the crowds are back. The people are coming out, and it's not only the supporters of the clubs that's involved. The neutral has been engaged in this championship.
It's amazing the amount of players that go to matches. Like at the Maracloon Ballabay game, so many Carduff men at the game. And then when you go, last time I was in Latin were playing Annamullen. Loads of Enniskeane lads at the game, obviously because they have interest in their group and whatnot. Mm. But I have to say there was a massive crowd in Latin. It was a beautiful evening. I know your weather on Saturday, Sean. We talked last week about 2-pointers. Well, the wind and the weather lent itself to 2-pointers, which you definitely spoke about against Clontibret and True. The weather was better, still a bit of a breeze, but the weather was better in the Latin Enniskeane game. But in the Maracloon Ballabay game, there was a wind as well. But the massive crowd in Latin, should I say, for the Latin Inniskeen game. And I have to say, it was quite low scoring for the new rules, but it was so entertaining. The game zipped along. It was a beautiful evening, massive crowd, and there was plenty of good football, but there was also plenty of kind of, championship stuff. You knew there was something at stake. It started feeling and sounding and looking like a real championship stuff, because both these teams wanted to get into that semi-final, I can tell you that.
Yeah, there was a bit of bite to it. It's probably,
Absolutely. And as the game wore on, the teeth got sharper and the bites got bigger,
Well, I suppose maybe we'll start there, and we're going to talk up Inniskeen here. And I was listening with interest to your interview with John McEntee afterwards, and he did allude to that. He's delighted the last four, you're one step closer to a county final. It's that layoff. Clontibbert would have experienced it last year, and it's just the way it has fell. They have their bye. There's going to be the weekend. Well, it's quarterfinal, I think it is. Then there's the weekend off, and then you're into the semi-final. So they have that layoff now. It's twofold. It gives any little knocks, niggles, or anything like that an opportunity to clear up. They should have a full bill of health, unless there's a serious long-term injury. So you should have your full panel available for you. But momentum then is the other side of this, and having that winning momentum. But I haven't seen Inniskeen myself yet in the championship. But going, Fergal, by what you've been reporting and what you've been telling us, they're just going about their business. Momentum's there to win, but they just seem to be. They have what they need to do. They're ticking the boxes. They are where they want to be.
Yeah, Inniskeen, I didn't know really where Inniskeen were in relation to the championship, because the manner in which they beat Ballabay and the manner in which they beat Maracloon was so businesslike. And I know that's a phrase. What I mean by that is there was no fuss. They literally won the game, weren't asked questions possibly, or if they were, they answered them so convincingly they didn't look like they were asked a question. They just... It was quite undramatic. It was quite, they just won it, and you went off going, right, well, that was that job done. But you weren't thinking, well, that's the championship, that's the county champions there. But I have to say, on Sunday evening, Sean, they showed that extra quality, because they were against a team at home in Latin that have been absolutely flying and looked. I would have had them possibly as favourites at home against Inniskeen, but Inniskeen completely were just brilliant. They managed the game brilliantly. It was a tight game now. Like, in the second half, it was 9 points apiece at one point before the two black cards, black card for James Slevin and a black card for Andrew Woods. But in that moment in time, a fella I mentioned who's came to life really in this game, because he was having a quiet enough championship, and he's an absolutely brilliant forward, Sean Jones. He got that goal. Mark McNally was the referee. Did it really well, played advantage, let Jones go on, and he got up kind of half stumbling, and he buried it into the top left corner, unstoppable shot, and then scored a point straight after it. He's a mercurial type of forward. He's so talented, and he's been quite quiet by his high standards in the championship. But I feel he's going to come to life, and that's another big plus for Inniskeen. He is quality, and you have Andrew Woods, who's playing the football of his life. Scored 6 points again against Latin, in and out. He's really involved in games. Sometimes Andrew, we know what Andrew can do, but he's consistently involved in the games. He's getting so much more out of himself. He had a great season with Monaghan as well. He's playing the football of his life. Inniskeen did a nice move as well. Harry Monaghan was down for number 8. He's a big man. Kind of got that great mullet mustache. Very, very cool character. Put him in full forward. Target man. He was a handful for the first 20 minutes. That physicality inside. And speaking to Maracloon's Damien Feeney, the manager, that physicality in the full forward line is a big plus if you can get the clientele to have it. Inniskeen had it. He won ball, fed off, scored a point himself. And I went through the team and I circled a couple of names, as I was talking to John McEntee in the interview. Kieran McNulty playing midfield. And as the game wore on, Kieran has that ability to always make the right decision. He carries the ball when he has to, so comfortable on the ball, gives a pass, links to play. Very impressive. And then the other man I wanted to mention was Shane Hannerty. He was wearing number 12. He's worn number 12 throughout this championship. He would have been on the county team over the years. He has basically been the man marker on the Inniskeen team. He marked Aaron Mulligan there at the weekend, marked Micheál Bannigan, he marked Paddy McMahon, and he's been brilliant. But not only is he a man marker, he's a footballer, and he connects play and he gets forward himself as well. So what I'm talking about in Enniskeane, Garrett Burns was excellent. Aidan Woods, Connor Jones is there. Michael Monaghan, captain, brilliant. Colin Meegan got forward as well. And Shane O'Connor. Like, I'm going through this team and they're all brilliant ball players, Sean. Bit like Scottstown, bit like Clontibright. They're all comfortable on the ball. And I just, like, we're a bit like the wind. We're going this way and that. But I'm only talking about what I seen at the weekend. And I have to talk them up. They were absolutely brilliant. They faced a team that has aspirations to win the championship, and they won away from home in a tough place to go, and they were very, very impressive. And they have clientele, they have leaders, they have scorers, and they have footballers. So you're talking about losing Tommy Dornan. Look, they're playing with a freshness this year in Enniskeane, and they're playing with a type of, as you say, no nonsense, getting on with the job. It doesn't look frantic. It doesn't look like they're just taking it a game at a time, and they're playing this championship really well. But as you say, and John mentioned it in the interview, last year Clontibright got straight through in the group, and they had their bye in the last game. So now they have that. They have a couple of weeks there, and then they have another couple of weeks to wait for a semi-final. So John McEntee is going to have to get a lot of challenge matches. He's going to have to keep that momentum. But they have players to come back as well. And as you said there in your question, Sean, it will do them the world of good to have young Megan to come back as well, who's our top scorer last year. So he will be back probably with that duration of time. And that's another plus for them. So like options and forwards. And as I said to you last week, in order to win this championship and with the new rules, you got to go win the game. You can't just not hope not to lose it. And the one thing about Enniskeane now at the minute, they have men who can win games and playing well. And that's not to say Latin were tough, and Latin were good as well. The best team won in the night, but Latin had some big performers as well. And Thomas McPhillips, he's just a great player. Kieran Duffy scored 2 points. He was laying out at number 6. James Slevin. Aaron Mulligan was kept relatively quiet. He was man-marked, but still dangerous. But problem for Latin, I think they might have a few injuries. A guy I love as a footballer, Stephen McCabe, I think he may have done something to his shoulder or collarbone. Didn't get confirmation. Didn't get talking to David Lennon after. It's just difficult after. Everyone's in such a hurry out of there when you get caught in one interview. You know yourself, Sean, and then you look around and they've done a runner to the car because they don't want to see you coming. But Ryan Duffy could be an injury. That Dara Dempsey didn't start. So these are James Slevin may have had an injury as well. So I'm not confirming anything. That was just talking to Latin people after. That's a headache now for David Lennon because he's the opposite of Enniskeane with the big break, Sean. He has now to come in again a local derby against Ballabay. He's been pulled into a situation here that they have to win, and they're going to be down a few men, and they have to win, as you say, 2 games essentially to get into that semi-final in fairly quick succession. And the injuries will be an issue if they're as bad as people have said.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You're balancing that long layoff and losing momentum against a minefield. And obviously, I know the bye is there and there's still a round of games to be played. The minefield of a quarterfinal and who you could be paired off against in that also as well. So it's a fine line. It is a balancing act, I suppose. But as John alluded to, you're one step closer. You're in a semi-final, and that's all you can look forward to now and work towards. Just the contrast then, that was 2 teams vying to top the group compared to Maracloon and Ballybay. Then the other game on Sunday, Fergal, that were vying to try and get themselves out of the bottom end of it. Maracloon coming out on top, gaining the 2 valuable points, and 2 big points in the scheme of things.
Yeah, Maracloon had a lot of questions to answer themselves, and obviously I'm in the parish there, and Damien Feeney and Eamon Hughes there with the team. They were really going well. They just wouldn't have been happy with maybe the battles. They would have been very, very disappointed with their lack of intensity, their lack of energy, their lack of putting it up to Enniskeane. How they were just batted aside. It really was a non-event. But I had credit where it's due. They came with energy. They came with physicality against Ballabay. I thought Jack Dugan was immense. He played around the midfield area, on some really good primary possession. But then they had a bit of energy in the full forward line as well. They had Barry Kieran in there. And I talk about Harry Monaghan going in as a full forward for Enniskeane. Barry Kieran went into the full forward line for Maracloon and he added something. And Maracloon hadn't scored a goal in the championship. They scored 2 against Ballabay, and Barry Kieran scored both of them. So he brought that little bit more of a target man, a bit of physicality. And coming off that, then we're running off the shoulder like Paddy McMahon, Alan Mackay. I think Alan finished up with 10 points. He kept that scoreboard ticking over. He was on song. Paddy McMahon, Adam McKeown, Dylan Farley, all excellent. And Jack Dugan said, Packy Dugan walked. They all played well. Dylan Bear and Pete Ward. There was an intensity there, an energy. And their second goal was brilliant. They had a turnover in their own half-back line. They ran the length of the pitch and got it into the back of the net. So that'll please the management no end. From a Ballabay point of view, I kind of knew the lie of the land in the sense of Ballabay. Ryan Wiley was absolutely immense. The half-back line, all was good for Ballabay, Colm Lennon, Owen McCartney. But Christopher McGuinness, live wire. And Thomas Kerr with his free kicks, particularly his 2-pointers, were big in the first half. When there was that crossfield breeze, Sean, I don't know if you're up American, there's always this crossfield breeze. Yep. Well, Thomas judged it to perfection. But the problem for Ballabay, they weren't scoring enough. The 2-pointers kept it. I think there were 2 or 3 2-pointers in the first half. 2 2-pointers in the first half. And a fortuitous goal for Colm Lennon went for a shot and drop short, and Christopher McGuinness, as he does, got it into the back of the net. But it was 1-5 at half time in favour of Maracloon, who had that slight breeze in the second half. And they really used it to their advantage. They really took over, went at 113 to 1-8 ahead, and they never looked back really after that. It finished up 216 to, I think it was 111. So it was a great win for Maracloon. It was one they badly need, but it sets it up really well. Ballabay didn't play badly, and they've improved no end since the first game against Inniskeen. But look, it's like everything, injuries, and just if I talked about the injuries Ballabay had in an inter-county setup, you know, you'd be under pressure. Like Desi Ward is such a big loss to them. Drew Wiley, like their spiritual leader, really. You know, he offers so much, even just his presence. And, you know, you have other men, you know, struggling as well there. From a Ballabay point of view, an injury, but they've regrouped and they're still in it. And this Latin Ballabay game now has taken a whole new kind of slant because of that result Latin had against Inniskeen.
Yeah, and just maybe just looking at that group, that's what you have this weekend. Ballybay Latin, local derby, and Maracloon Armullen. And interestingly enough, Armullen, even though they've suffered 3 defeats, 1 game remaining, get themselves 2 points. And all of a sudden, and I know it's going to take a quirk of a results and score difference and stuff like that, but there is still a chance for them to be making a quarter-final and dropping 2 down below them then as well. And that's what you want. As I said, you mentioned earlier, you don't want these dead rubbers going into these final round of games.
No, and look, Annamullen, you know what Annamullen are like. They're a proud team. They will not want to go through this championship losing no points. And it's rare that happens as well. So they're at home. They've been close. They haven't been as good as they were, but this is an opportunity. This could... that's not a game, you know. That's going to be a very tough game, particularly for a Maracloon team, which is a bit more pressure on. There's really no pressure on Annamullen. You know, no one, like, if they don't win, they don't win. If they win, then suddenly they're in. But that's a dangerous team when the pressure's off and they can just go and play. But they haven't been as good as they have been in the past. There's no doubt about that. But they have Micheál Bannigan. They have dangerous men. And they have a team. And just the way they are, Annamullen, they won't give up, and they're going to work. They're going to give it everything. Like, that's a guarantee. So, like, you're not going to go to Annamullen and have an easy time. So that's Maracloon are favourites, though, and I think that Maracloon are playing well, and they've come into a bit of form now with that game against Ballabay. Maybe that'll give them the confidence. They're a very young team, so that'll give them great confidence. But from an Annamullen point of view, they had their bye. Mickey Conlon will have them ready. I know he was immensely disappointed with how they were getting on, but they have 2-point options in their team. Kieran Duffy's a great man for a 2-pointer. Micheál Bannigan can hit 2-pointers, and I know I go on about 2-pointers and stuff like that, but you get a 2-point score, Sean, and then win the next kick out and get another one. And suddenly it's a 4-point, and game changes, momentum swings, crowd are on the wind is in their sails, and it's a big thing. And I definitely think Annamullen might have the advantage on the 2-point scale as regards Maracloon. But I do feel that Maracloon team might have enough this time just to get through, because I do think the prize for Maracloon is massive. Now, the prize for Annamullen is the kickstarts their season and they're back in this championship with everyone on 2 points. But I think Maracloon are in a good enough place. I think they needed that win. That win was like medicine to them. The confidence and the young team that's in it, and particularly getting a couple of goals. Said last week they're going to need goals. They got them. And I think that could be the kickstart for them. But it's not a gimme. This is going to be both these teams with traditional. I remember as a young fella years and years ago, in the old Inniskeen pitch. Remember the pitch used to be in the village. I remember Maracloon and Annamullen people will remember this. Maracloon and Annamullen had played each other in an intermediate or junior championship, and they went, I think it was 4 draws. Week after week, they played each other. And Annamullin people love talking about it because they won in the end, but they had some great battles over the years. And that is part of it. They are not going to get an easy. And Annamullin will not fear Maraclune one iota.
I think there's a podcast where you were chatting to Gabriel Bannigan. He recalled and reflected on those games and that run of what it was. Talk about Dublin and Meath back in the early part of the 90s. This was on a par with that.
Absolutely. And it captured the imagination as well, because the crowd, the way you remember Blaney and Scottstown in county finals having draws. And every week, the crowds will get bigger because familiarity, you know what happens? People get very familiar and it becomes, whether the football gets any better, I'm not sure, but there's drama. The drama increases, and that's what people love. And the crowd were massive. I remember I was a young fella at the time, and I still remember it. And people still talk about those games. So Annamullin, as I say, will not fear Maraclune, and Maraclune won't fear Annamullin. Both are going to go at it. It's a great opportunity, but it's a big opportunity for Maraclune, who are guaranteed winning this game, senior status, and then even more than that, looking forward into this championship. I know they're an ambitious young side, so the prize is big for Maraclune. There's no pressure on Annamullin. People are writing them off already, but there is the glimmer of hope. And where there's life, there's hope. Or where there's hope, there's life. Whatever way that goes. But there's hope. There's still a glimmer there for Annamullin. They can get something out of it.
Absolutely. But you're saying Maraclune. Just before I move across, and I know we've touched on 2 Point, but I'm going to come back on that. The other one, Ballybay Latin, what are you calling there?
Yeah, I would have 100% been on the Latin camp. And I'm still tipping Latin simply because, a 4-point loss to Inniskeen doesn't make you a bad team overnight. They were 9 points apiece. It was the Sean Jones goal that was the difference. And Latin were pushing the whole way until the end. This game was in the melting pot right up until the end. So I'm going to go Latin. I would just think there's a squeak there because of the injuries. Ballybay, a local derby, and talking to both sets of people, they know each other so well, and they know they're going to give. It just gives it an extra motivation if you need it. Latin know Ballybay are going to up their game big time for them, and they're expecting a big battle. But you'd have to say, look, we talk about Latin, Inniskeen, Scottstown, Clontibberet, maybe Carduff in there as well as the informed teams, and you'd have to stick with Latin. But suddenly it's getting a wee bit more pressurized for Latin, where there was a possibility of straight into a semi-final. Now you're in the possibility of mathematically being sucked into a relegation thing, which is unlikely. But at the same time, it's just not a smooth sailing. So they're going to want to get back on track. But the injuries I spoke about, Sean, I don't know how serious some of them are they going to be down players. And the players I mentioned there with the possible injuries are serious players who are starters and who contribute massively to the Latin challenge. So that will be an issue for Latin. But as it stands, I'd have to say Latin just a wee bit ahead of Ballybay in the form stakes. But Ballybay will have really got back on track from that first game against Inniskeen, against Annamullin. They were better. They were better against Maraclune for long periods of time. But Latin, for me, still a good team, still showing enough to have a big say in this championship, provided the injuries aren't as bad as people have said.
There you go. Right. We'll have them noted down. Coming back to the 2 Point, Fergal, it was so interesting when we talked to you last week. You talked about how big a score they're coming in the game now, particularly if you have the quality players. It was interesting in the Clontibberet True game. There was 12 2-pointers in that game, 5 for True in the first half with the Breeze on their back, 7 for Clontibberet in the second half when they had the Breeze on their back as well. Scottstown, similar. They started against the Breeze. Cromartin with Stephen Mooney were getting the 2-pointers. When it went to the second half of the game, up stepped Rory Beggan, and we know what Rory does when it comes to 2-pointers. Chatting to players that were involved in it, the 2-pointer, I was saying to them, a 2-pointer now is, I would argue, bigger than a goal. You have to work hard to get the goal. You have to get in to get the goal. The 2-pointer has been awarded to the lads that can kick it from 40 plus meters. management of Scotstown talking to Dave McKeag. He's not a fan of the 2-pointers because he says you're rewarding somebody that can kick a ball at 40 meters, but you're not awarding them if they can kick it at 39.99 meters. So and him was one of the best place kickers. And he said himself, he says, and listen, I know we're one of the best place kickers in the country when it comes to 2-pointers. But he says, does it skew it a bit sometimes that the team with the quality are being outscored by the team that has the best kicker?
What's your definition of quality, though? Is the best kicker quality? This is
absolutely. Well, I go witness to it.
Yeah,
two lads.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I mean, well, should it be 45 meters? Should it be scrap it and just do a 2-pointer for a 45? Or are you punishing someone for defending a ball? Then there's so many little nooks and crannies you can get caught on. The other option is 4 points for a goal. These are all bigger issues and bigger things. The only thing I will say, and the weather is becoming a thing, and I don't know if that should be a factor that we're always talking about. And I'm nearly sick of telling people about wind and who has the wind and all the rest of it.
It's become such a big. It was so evident in the 2 games that I seen on Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday particularly, Sean.
Yeah.
Your games, and you would have saw it, like you said it. You spoke about it brilliantly against True and Clonterburn with the 12 pointers. Like there was 1-12 scored by Inniskeen against Latin. Clonterburn scored 14 points in 2-pointers in one half. So you can see the difference that is, and that's because the weather. I saw Conor McManus's point from midfield, like with the wind. It was a brilliant kick anyway, and that was definitely worth a 2-pointer. It come off the crossbar and over. You remember the one I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's
Sean. Yeah. But we are now coming into September. County final will be in October. The weather isn't going to get better. We talked about it. I remember listening to the Cavan County final a couple of years ago. Maybe it was last year. Was it, Sean?
I think it was
4-3 or something. Those gale force threes.
Yeah.
So, look, that is something, where weather is becoming a bigger factor. And we always talk about breezes and playing with the wind. And, sometimes it makes no difference with teams. But with the 2-pointers, it does make a difference. I like the 2-pointers, I have to say. I think they add something. But are they, we have to be careful maybe that they don't become the be-all and end-all. But I like the 2-pointers, I have to say. They have added something to it. But these 2-pointers are going to become a thing. I'm telling you now, Sean, in the county final, the 2-pointer could be the winner. When we talked about this, I said, like, the teams that have the shooters, the forwards now, and maybe that's what the rule was designed for, by the way, that the offensive quality, and you talked about what's quality, the quality, is quality a lad who can hit a long distance shot? Yes. And also the new rules, though, don't forget, with the 3-man inside has lent itself to allowing quality players to express themselves as well. So, but I definitely think the 2-pointer, Sean, you saw it firsthand Saturday, particularly with Cromartin, Scottstown and True. And I want to turn the tables on you, sir, and ask you what you think. What is your view on the 2-pointer? Because you saw it even more than anybody.
Well, yeah, well, it's interesting, and I know the caveat is that there was 9 goals scored in the Scottstown Cromartin game, even though I'm saying goals are hard to come by. But you still, the 2-pointers were the key scores at times. And again, it must be said, Clonterburn and True was similar. True with the breeze on their back, and they were just edging away. Then Clonterburn, and I mentioned again to lads after I said the most important score to me in that game was Clontiburn's goal in the first half, because it brought it back. It left only 3 between them at the break, because True had put 2-pointers back to back. And I remarked at the time, I says, Clonterburn will have the breeze in the back. They definitely have the shooters. They were even able to have Dara Hughes return back from injury. He kicked 2-pointers. Conor McManus kicked 3, I think it were 4 of them. So he was, and Aaron Carey then kicked one for them as well. Like, so they had the shooters, they had the quality to be able to do that. At the same time, there was 2 goals scored by either side then as well. But it was just interesting. 3 points True, and they pushed it out then. They got a goal and a point to start the second half, 7 points. Yet Clonterburn still ended up winning by 7. As you said, 7 2-pointers was 14 points. That was the turning of that game. And as you go deeper into this championship, and I knew you had noted it, you said the 2-pointers are going to become such a big thing that they will be the decider. And as I said, Dave McCaig was chatting to him afterwards, and he said it to me. He admitted, he says, True, on the day that they played them in the championship, he says True were the better team for the standard Scotstown would set themselves. But yet he said we were grateful of the 2 pointers, two pointers back to back from Max Maguire, and obviously Rory at the end with the one then to win it for them. So it has become a massive key factor in these championship games.
Yeah, it has. And what that's the game we have now, and we roll with it. You know, in years gone by, we were talking about defenses and blanket defenses or whatever. This is the thing now, and we roll with it. It's actually, but it's more for me though. It's a better problem and it's a better argument than the argument of, you can't get inside or they have 6 men inside their 14-meter line or whatever. It's an argument that's more of a positive thing. It's like in soccer years ago where they tried to give the benefit of the doubt before VAR, give the benefit of the doubt to the attacker. So it's, for me, it is a debate, but it's a more lighter debate. It's a more positive debate. It's a nicer debate to be having than, what are we going to do to make this game watchable? We're in a better place. So I'm happy enough at the minute, but that's all right until I suppose the 2-pointer goes back to bite you on the backside, which it probably will. But that's football, and that's the beauty of it. And I think I'm taking this championship so far in a very good. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying going to the match. I'm not saying I never did. I always enjoy going to matches, but I find coming home from games, you'd watch another game, whereas in years past, Sean, you watch a couple of games, you'd be like,
Yeah.
I might put on a bit of Sopranos or something to cheer myself up.
Yeah, well, I know on Saturday in particular, we were bouncing from one game to the other, and the young lad with me, and he couldn't wait. He says, I love the double games, he says, because you get one game and you're immediately jumping in the yoke to go to another. And at
Yeah.
the end of the day, that's you want. You want to sell the game that you want to go to watch it. And that's definitely the case at the minute. You want to go to watch it. And as I said, very evident with the crowds that we're getting. Just on that group, sidetrack there ever so slightly. Let's get back to it. Scotstown, Clonturber, Clonduff. 3 teams now vying for a semi-final or 2 quarter-finals. This group is split now. True, Cromartin in the relegation group, but they still can play a massive part in regards to the setting up of the other 3 teams, naturally enough.
Yeah, Clonturber will want to finish the job. Cromartin have been valiant in defeat, and I don't want to sound, condescending or annoying to the team. They've been, they've done everything they can. They just haven't done enough, I suppose, to win, and they've been unlucky in games. Clonturber will want to finish this job. They have to win to be in that pot for us straight into a semi-final that they did last year as well. Similar to what Inniskeen did, they had their bye last year and they had to wait a few weeks, went in a little bit undercooked, but they got through that semi-final. Clonduff have had their bye this week and they're welcoming the county champions to their home patch now, and they'll be relishing it. They will be. They're guaranteed quarter-final anyway. So This one, and they can get into a semi-final possibly with winning. So this one has fireworks all over it. This one will be a real good battle, and Clonduff will really want to go at Scottstown and see, well, because Scottstown, as we said, and you would have saw, they're the only team Scottstown haven't actually seen this year, Sean. You've covered whatever ways I'm going to see them this weekend. I'm looking forward to it. But, there's been much made of Conor McCarthy being injured, Ryan O'Toole, but they brought in Max Maguire. They brought in, you mentioned, I think we were chatting on the phone after the game, and you can list all the young players that are coming in and they're playing really well. Sorry?
Dara Murray, Donncha Conley. You can see that exuberance of youth coming into the Scottstown team. Yeah. And the weekend gone by, haven't seen them in the 2 previous games against Clonturber, the draw, where they played well, disappointed to have drawn. They didn't go to the standards they set for themselves against True and got it over. They spread their wings on Saturday past. You could see it. They spread their wings. They used the bench. It was the tactical Scottstown that we're so familiar with now that can just up the game when they need it. Darren Hughes leading them when leadership was needed. They started that game actually without Michael McCarville in the middle of the field. Big Gavin McPhillips was back. Dara Murray, young man, but so much was going through him, and they were working so much through him as well. Donncha Conley, as I said, then too. Francis Maguire came in, popped over a couple of scores. They're peaking. And you can see that with them. They're gradually moving towards the peak of their powers.
Yeah, probably are, Sean. The only thing, what gives everyone a bit of hope, I suppose, is that Scotsman aren't blowing teams away. Now, obviously, they had a strong win against Cromartin there, but, they've drawn with Clonderritt. They got out of jail a little bit against True. So, the sense that there were a couple of injuries from very, very strong footballers, very, very impressive guys, like at the inter-county level. It just gives a little bit of, I suppose, hope. It gives a bit that maybe they can be got at, but nobody's beaten them yet. Having said that, so that's the thing. But Carduff do not lose many games at home. I did an interview with Seamus McEnany after a game, beat Annamullen last year in a very tough game, and I think he came through. He gave me some stat about the amount of games they've lost at home. It's very, very small. I don't think they've lost too many, so they will relish the fact that they have some young players, some maybe not as experienced as what Scottstown had with their injuries and that. So although exceptional, they'll be looking forward to getting an opportunity to come up against some maybe more inexperienced Scottstown players, albeit you have still Kieran Hughes and Darren Hughes and Miel McCarville and the like still there doing their thing. Jack McCarran, the list goes on. We know how brilliant they are. So, but Carduff will relish that challenge, and getting them on their home turf as well will be a big deal for them. So, I'm looking forward to it. I have to say, I looked at the odds on the championship. Scotston are hot favourites. They're still way out in front in what people see. So, Scotston are favourites for this game. They're favourites for the championship. But I definitely think we'll know a lot more about both teams, particularly about Scottstown after Sunday evening. Not just if they win, but the manner of the winning for me, because they're going to come up against a team with Jason McGee and Jordan McGarrell in midfield. And Jordan McGarrell, give him a special mention. I think he's been exceptional for Carduff. People ask about looking at players who possibly come in. I'm not sure what age Jordan is, but he's playing brilliant football. Fergal Monaghan can hit a 2-pointer. Did it against True in the windy game there in Carduff as well. We talked to that wind again. They hit a lot of 2-pointers that day. If Carduff can get enough scores, Sean Burns is a tricky forward. Keith McEnany is very strong in there. But if Carduff can get enough scores and keep that scoreboard ticking over for enough of people, enough of forwards, they'll be dangerous. They'll be hard to shake. Scottstown will be in for a good old battle there now. But yeah, I think I'm going to go with I think Scottstown will win this one just about. I wouldn't be surprised though. It wouldn't be the biggest shock in the world if Carduff got something out of this.
Well, we'll watch with interest, and as you said, I know you're looking forward to that one. The other one, Clonderritt against Cromartin, a local derby, the two teams within the one parish, and we know Cromartin and we know where they find themselves, but they could still have a big say in regards to Clonderritt and where they could find themselves either in a quarter-final or in a semi-final. There'd be an argument, Fergal, and it was only when you were talking there, even about Carduff and Scottstown, there's not the jeopardy of I'm out of the championship if I lose. You're just playing for positions. I wonder how big a factor that could have on teams. Some might look and say, well, maybe a quarter-final and getting another game going into a semi-final wouldn't be a bad thing. And mindful then, I said earlier on, it's a minefield if that does happen. Could that become a factor even in the likes of Clonderritt, Cromartin?
I'm just wondering, and this won't, every team that's playing will want to win, and every team will want to get straight into the semi-final. I wonder, is there, with Scottstown, with their injuries, would they like longer, or will it make any difference? Do they want more games to play themselves into this championship? I think all teams want to get straight into a semi-final. It's just too risky. Quarterfinals are risky games. You can lose, or the banana skins, you can, whatever. You don't want to get pulled into a quarterfinal if you can help it. I think Clonderritt against Cromartin, that's a local derby. I mean, Carduff went down to Cromartin and really just got out of jail, by the skin of their teeth. So Clonderritt, Cromartin are going to put it up to Clonderritt as well. But I think Clonderritt are playing with an assuredness and a freshness. And I just feel every player is on form at the minute. And their bench, and they're mixing up players there, and they have young lads coming in. And I just feel they're running off the shoulder. They're players that can shoot from distance. Possibly Cromartin will not have enough firepower for them. Bar Stephen Mooney, they have got a few bit more help from the likes of David Hanley and Barry John Grimley and Barry Kerr and the likes, but Johnny McGuigan, but will they have enough scores in them? Whereas I think Clontibret, with their hard running, Killian Lavelle back to his best after that shoulder injury. Conor Boyle's there, serious footballer. They have a good keeper in Darren McDonald. Like Aaron Carey is, as I said last week, I think county football has brought him on no end. And then you have the guys in the wings like Conor Doyle and Daniel McDonald and Jack Gorman. They're all doing their business, and Brian Green in there and Ryan McGuigan. Lads we don't talk about as much, but these guys are scoring. They're scoring goals. I'm impressed with Clontibret. I really am. And of all the teams to have that pedigree, they really they always believe they can win a championship, even when they're not playing well, but they are playing well now. So I'm going to give Clontibret the tip there. And I've spoken about Cromartin at length, and it's been a tough year for them, but, they just have fallen short, but not for the lack of effort. And they have a great management team. I really enjoyed the interview with Frank Fitzsimons as well after the game. He's a really good football man. So unless to throw a spanner in the works, the big problem for teams is I'm giving them. I've never got 100% of these right, so somebody's going to be disappointed here. But I'm going to go with Clontibret. Carduff, Scottstown. I haven't seen Scottstown, as I said. I'm going to see them at the weekend. You saw them. I'm just going by the scoreboard. But they have the 2-point man and Rory Began. They are the county champions, but they're going into the Lions Den. They're going into the Bear Pit now in Carduff. It's a great venue. That's going to be a brilliant game in the sense that I think Carduff really will fancy, seeing where are we now. They've come up against Scottstown a couple of times over the years now as a senior team. They had much maligned semi-final where they come up and there was a big battle that day. Scottstown had too much for them. They want to see, well, are we any closer now? How close are we here? And have they enough quality to get enough scores to beat Scottstown? And having said that, even beating Scottstown, can you beat, as I said at the beginning of this podcast series about the championship, I believe if Scottstown lose, they'll only lose one game in this championship if they lose a game. And to me, it's I can't see Scottstown losing 2 games. I'd be very surprised. So I just have a feeling though Carduff are going to get very close to them. I really do. But I'm going to go the percentage called county champions, favourites for the championship. I'm going to go with them, but I feel that this one could be a dinger. I really do. I think it could be one of those atmospheric nights, But I'm going to play the safe game, the cautious game. I'm going to go with the county champions just to squeeze through. But this one could go very close.
Absolutely, and you're siding with Cromartin there as well. The only saving grace you have this weekend,
I'm siding with Clontibret.
Sorry, yes, I do. Apologies.
That's bad news for Clontibret, by the way.
Cromartin now, but you went with Clontibret. Absolutely. I'm just thinking you're not going to be met at a gate by somebody saying, "Well, you backed us or you didn't back us," because all the games throw in at the one time, obviously, which is the important thing. So that hex won't be throwing at you, bar just the game maybe that you're at. We're really looking forward.
I'm going to Carduff. And I have my father played with Carduff, so I've connections there, and I'm going down to Carduff. But as I say, that's going to be and we talked about games, and Maracuna playing Annamullen as well. I'm not sure what. We're all on at 5:00, isn't it, Sean? 5 on Sunday.
At the same time, yeah, they're doing.
So we're working out our calendar there, but I feel, the Scottstown Carduff game could be a really good game. Even though, as you say, Sean, rightly so, the jeopardy isn't there maybe as much as say Latin Ballabay or Maracloon, Annamullen. So, but there's an intriguing battle there, and I think Carduff will want a litmus test to measure where are we as a team in this championship. Let's play the best and see where we are. And we're getting the best in our own backyard. And that's a big thing for Carduff. They really want to make that kind of like Thomond Park over the years, like a real fortress. So I can't wait for that one. I really can't. I hope it's a really good game. I think it'll have plenty of drama and plenty of talking points.
Well, there you are. It'll make it for interesting what next week we'll be talking about. But I think the key word we'll take from that, intrigue, and that is a brilliant way to have described this championship so far, and there's still so much of that to look forward to this weekend. Don't forget the Monaghan Way podcast. There's plenty of other podcast to listen back on there. And you can even go back maybe and just query and question Fergal on some of the thought previous. They're all there for you to look back on and just see how good has he been on these assumptions and presumptions that he's been putting to us as well. And there's lots of others there you can check in on. I know Shane McGurk was back in darts action there recently. We have a brilliant podcast with him. Darren Hughes, of course, call time in his intercounty career. A great chat with him there as well at the Kilmore training ground. Scarlett Heron is another one that comes to mind as well. A young lady from the region, from the county indeed, with us here. That's involved with Shelbourne, of course, and would have featured obviously at underage for the Irish soccer teams. Conor Mohan rallying as well. There's so much for you to listen back on the previous 17 episode with us. This has been episode 18 of the Monaghan Way. We're already looking forward to episode 19. Thank you very much.